Welcome to the show, the Friday edition of the Sharp Football Show. Happy to be here. It is a great and beautiful day, and we're happy that you guys are here in the chat over on YouTube. Make sure if you're watching on X that if you want to chat with us, go over to YouTube, because I love shouting out the comments that we get over from the listeners on YouTube, as well as answering some of your questions, which we will do throughout the show. So you can go onto YouTube, search for the Sharp Football Analysis channel, and you'll find a link to the show at the top there. And of course, we've got a lot of you guys in here already. Good morning, Tyler. Good morning, fellow winners, Jesus. We've got that boy Kloss. We're dialed in. A lot of the guys that we normally see in here, and hopefully we'll welcome in some new folks as well. But with that said, we've got a big show in store for us. We've got a special treat at some point during this show, which is the first time we've done this year, and I'm excited to share that with you. But with that said, I want to first, and we will talk about the game last night. I see some of you guys in the chat are talking about the Bengals lost last night, the Bengals covering the spread. We are going to be talking about that game with Joe Gibbs, our ref analyst, later on in the show. As we normally do, in case you're new here, we will walk through first college football, then a little bit of NFL, and then we'll get into our ref expert, who is going to talk a little bit further about some of the NFL games this weekend. And then last but not least, I'll throw out a few props that I personally like. And we're going to get started with a little bit of background on why I think the Miami Dolphins are going to be able to really get their offense jump-started a little bit this week. So let's dive into that topic first, Matt. So we know one of the biggest things that the Dolphins lost when they lost Tua, obviously their QB1, but was his ability, the unique ability that he brought to the table of being able to utilize quick release and play action, unlike any other quarterback in the NFL is capable of doing. The Miami Dolphins, the fastest time to throw in the NFL, but they were also using play action at the highest rate. And that's something very difficult to accomplish, but it's something that really was able to jumpstart that passing attack, fool a lot of the defenses that they were playing, and give them an upper hand, unlike any other offense was able to do in the NFL. And we know that this team came out with Tua, and they lost in an unfortunate fashion against the Arizona Cardinals in Tua's first game back 2 weeks ago. And then, of course, they lost this past week against the Buffalo Bills. And so they're really grasping at straws here. They're really needing this victory on Monday Night Football out in Los Angeles. And I want to bring up the first graphic, Matt, that showcases the play action usage rate. The play action deficiency. So, Matt, if you can bring that one up for us. Okay. Defenses with and without play action. So on the x-axis here, you are seeing the efficiency that defenses have when opposing offenses use play action against them, with the best defenses on the right and the worst defenses on the left. And then on the y-axis, you're seeing pass defense when teams do not use play action against these pass defenses. So the best defenses when teams don't use play action are at the top, and the worst defenses when teams don't use play action are at the bottom. So, for example, bottom left quadrant there, the Jacksonville Jaguars, they are terrible whether you use play action against them or you don't use play action against them. But if you're up in that upper left-hand quadrant, where the LA Rams are, you are much better defensively when teams don't use play action, but you're significantly worse when teams use play action against you. And in fact, the LA Rams, if you look left to right here, they're the furthest left icon on the chart. They're the worst pass defense against play action of any pass defense in the NFL. But they are above average if you don't use play action against them. So it is vital that you utilize play action against a team like the LA Rams. And Fortunately, that's what the Miami Dolphins do. The Miami Dolphins are utilizing play action, as I mentioned, at one of the highest rates in the NFL, and specifically when Tua is the quarterback, it is the highest rate of usage in the NFL. And we'll get to this. We talk about a prop down the road here later on in the show about how this is going to factor in. But this is where the LA Rams are going to really be in trouble defensively, is because the Miami Dolphins actually utilize a lot of play action. Matt, if you can go to the next graphic, this one stands out even more dramatically. So what this graphic is I'm looking only at typical situations in which you would utilize play action, and I'm looking at wide receiver targets only. So typical situations are early downs in the first 3 quarters of games. That's it. So I'm just removing third downs and fourth quarters from the study. I'm trying to eliminate times that you're less likely to utilize play action. And the LA Rams are by far, you can see how much further they are away from even number 31. By far, the number 32 defense when teams utilize play action on early downs in the first 3 quarters and throw the football to wide receivers. And that's what, lo and behold, what do you think the Miami Dolphins love to do with their play action game? They love to throw to Tyreek Hill. They also love to throw to Jalen Waddle. So there's some big opportunities here to take advantage of the LA Rams defense by the Miami Dolphins offense. If you look at the Dolphins icon here as well, you will see that they too struggle massively against play action. When teams utilize play action and target wide receivers, if you saw in the first graphic as well, the Miami Dolphins were circled there. They're one of the worst defenses in the NFL defending play action, just like the LA Rams are. And guess who likes to utilize play action at an above average rate? Sean McVay and the LA Rams. The reason that over on the right, I've circled 2 icons there, 2 teams there, the Buffalo Bills and the Arizona Cardinals. If you can remember back 4 minutes ago, when I was talking about who the Miami Dolphins have played so far this year with Tua back, they played first the Arizona Cardinals and they played second the Buffalo Bills. Both of those defenses are quite good, well above average, and the Buffalo Bills are the best in the NFL at defending wide receiver passes off of play action. The very best. So the Miami Dolphins have a really great shock to their system type situation going on here, where they have just played the pass defense that is the best at defending what they like to do the most. The Dolphins love to throw to wide receivers off of play action. They use the highest rates of play action, but they just played a Buffalo Bills pass defense that is the best in the NFL by far at defending wide receiver passes off of play action. And now they're going to be going from the best to the worst by a mile in the LA Rams that struggle mightily defending play action to wide receivers. So this is going to be an extreme factor here. It would be one thing if the Dolphins didn't use play action a lot, and we would have to have that old assumption of rational coaching here. Maybe the Dolphins will try to jack up their usage of play action because they're finally going up against a team that struggles with it. But in this case, no, I don't think that we're going to need that assumption of rational coaching. We know the Dolphins and Mike McDaniel love to utilize a lot of play action, and they're going to be able to have a lot of success, in my opinion, against the LA Rams in this game. So I'm excited to see how that looks. That's not till Monday night. We've got a lot to discuss before then. So we might as well dive into what we've got to discuss first and foremost. That's what we're going to watch tomorrow and what we're going to want to bet on tomorrow. So with that being said, let's bring in Ryan McCrystal, our college football betting expert over at Sharp Football Analysis. You can see Ryan's X handle there. Make sure that you guys are giving him a follow. And you can check out all of his articles that he writes over at Sharp Football Analysis, which, by the way, if you're not following the Sharp Football Analysis Twitter handle or X handle that shares all of Ryan's articles, you should be doing that. It's Sharp FB Analysis. But at any rate, Ryan is going to be joining us today, as he does every single week. And Ryan is 16-9 for 64% on the show. And the first game that we're going to break down is the biggest game of the weekend. That's what Ryan loves to tackle. He likes to give you guys things to bet on the biggest games. He could be out there identifying values in the weeds, but what he's trying to do is identify some of the biggest games, some of the smartest bets that you could make on them. And the first game on deck, of course, is Georgia at Mississippi. The 7-1 Georgia Bulldogs are ranked third in the college football playoff rankings, and they're traveling to Oxford to take on the 6-2 Ole Miss Rebels. Georgia, of course, is coming off of their 34-20 victory over Florida. Ole Miss recently defeated narrowly Arkansas 28-24. Georgia's defense is allowing only 17 points per game and now take on Jackson Dart and Ole Miss's high-powered offense. Speaking of Jackson Dart, I don't know if you saw this play, Ryan, from last week's game, but Jackson Dart threw a pass. You could go ahead and roll that film, Matt. Threw a pass off to the sideline that was well overthrown. And
check this out. Lane Kiffin catches that football and then in frustration, disgust, slings it down the field.
Video camera caught this. It was pretty hilarious as he was just chucked it as hard as he could down the field in disgust. And then we saw, I tweeted out that video, and Lane Kiffin, who follows me on Twitter, came back afterwards, saw that, and gave the little emoji smiling face. So welcome to the show, Ryan. You're 64%. Let's have a great week this week. Show us why we should be backing my follower on X, Lane Kiffin, as a home dog tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm backing Kiffin tomorrow, and I'm going to start off by talking about Kiffin because we kind of have to acknowledge, if we're betting on Kiffin as an underdog in a big game like this, we have to acknowledge the perception that Lane Kiffin can't win the big game. I mean, that has hung over his head for a long time now. This is an opportunity for him to sort of push back against that. But I do want to point out some numbers here because as a home underdog at Ole Miss, Kiffin's actually 4-2 against the spread, and he's won 3 straight games outright, home or away, when he is an underdog of a field goal or less. So this perception that Kiffin can't win the big game, it's not that he doesn't show up in these tight games. It's that his team is often just not talented enough to win the big game. They're an underdog of a touchdown or more. And, you know, you're going to lose almost all of those games, right? When you're a big underdog, you're probably going to lose. You're an underdog for a reason. But in these tight games, he gets his team up when he's a home underdog. Like I said, 4-2 against the spread. Now, some of those were losses where he was an underdog of 17 points or whatnot. But the fact that he's getting his team to show up and beat the spread is significant. And in those tight games, like I said, when he is a small underdog, he's won 3 straight games. So Kiffin does show up in these types of games. I think that reputation is a little bit unearned. And in this game where we think it's a relatively even matchup from a talent perspective, where Ole Miss should have an opportunity, I don't think that reputation is really deserved in this particular situation. So I don't have any problems backing Kiffin because I think this is a good matchup for him. And I think in this type of game, he has proven capable of getting his team ready to outperform expectations. Now, digging into this particular matchup a little bit, the big reason why I like Ole Miss, we know they're a passing offense, and you can throw the ball on Georgia's defense this year. Outside the red zone, Ole Miss, 34% of their pass attempts are 15 or more yards downfield. That's the 6th highest rate in the country. In years past, that might be a bad game plan against Georgia, but not this season. Georgia is allowing a 45% completion rate at 15 or more yards downfield. That ranks 100th. They ranked 3rd by that metric last year. They have completely fallen off. I think a big reason why is they lost free safety Javon Bullard to the NFL, and he was an absolute ball hawk in the secondary for last year. His ability to read the quarterback and put himself in position to make plays really changed the dynamics of Georgia's deep secondary last season. Georgia's ball hawk rate, the rate at which defensive backs make a play on the ball, at 10 or more yards downfield last year, they ranked 8th. This year, they rank 84th. So I think they really miss Bullard. It's not something that I think they're just going to be able to fix by trying to prepare specifically for Ole Miss's schemes because they spread you out so much. I think that Ole Miss we can say confidently, they're going to be able to throw the ball on Georgia. So then it becomes an issue of, can Georgia keep up? Can they throw the ball? Now, normally you might think, well, sure, Ole Miss usually doesn't, Kiffin himself doesn't usually have a great defense on his teams. Georgia has plenty of talent. They'll probably be able to throw the ball. I'm skeptical that they're going to be able to do that in this matchup. I think Ole Miss's defense is underrated, and Georgia's passing game hasn't been great this year. Now, if you've paid attention to Georgia the last couple of weeks, you know the one thing really hanging over their head is Carson Beck and the 11 interceptions he's thrown this season. That is a huge red flag. You might say, well, Ole Miss, they don't have a spectacular pass defense. Maybe this is a bounce-back game for him because obviously last year he was much better. We've seen him perform well on the big stage before. It's a plausible theory, but I want to point out this stat to sort of draw attention to the fact that this might not entirely be Carson Beck. It might be the surrounding talent around him a little bit too. Because on throws of 15 or more yards downfield, which is a huge part of Georgia's offense, they throw 15 or more yards downfield at the 11th highest rate in the country. And on those throws, Beck ranks 27th in catchable pass rate, pretty similar to last year. But he ranks 83rd in completion rate, whereas he ranked in the top 10 in that metric last year. Huge drop off. He's throwing catchable passes at a very similar rate to last year, but his receivers aren't catching them. Now, remember, he lost Brock Bowers to the NFL, Ladd McConkey, Rosemary-Jack-Saint, 3 of his top 4 downfield weapons last season. They haven't really replaced them. They tried to go out into the transfer portal and get some guys like Colby Young from Miami, who hasn't really stepped up, Landon Humphreys, who's more of an underneath type receiver, who hasn't really made an impact downfield. I don't think this is something that Carson Beck necessarily is capable of changing right now because, yeah, he needs to cut down the interceptions. But the fact that their downfield passing game has taken a huge step backwards, I don't really think that's all on Carson Beck. I think the surrounding talent just isn't there. They haven't developed receivers. They've never been spectacular at that under Kirby Smart, and they weren't able to go out and get impact players in the transfer portal this year. So I have questions about Georgia's ability to keep up. Now, could they pivot to the run game in certain matchups? Maybe, but not against Ole Miss because Ole Miss's run defense is one of the best in the country. Ole Miss ranks 9th in both opponent-adjusted yards before contact and after contact against the run. Georgia's offense, they rank 75th or worse in both of those categories. So Georgia probably can't run the ball against them either. So looking at all those numbers, I think Ole Miss throws the ball on Georgia's defense pretty easily, and I have serious questions about Georgia's ability to move the ball consistently in both the passing game and the run game. So give me the points, and I'll take Ole Miss in this matchup.
All right, we'll see if our follower Lane Kiffin can get this job done for us. Next up, we've got another massive game for the SEC. Alabama at LSU, Ryan. The 6-2 Alabama Crimson Tide are ranked 11th, and they're going to visit a 6-2 LSU Tiger squad ranked 13th. Alabama is coming off a dominant win over Missouri. LSU seeks to rebound from a narrow loss to Texas A&M. The total has gone over, Ryan, in 6 of Alabama's 7 road games, but you're not looking at the total here. Show us why we should lay the short number with the Crimson Tide tomorrow.
Yeah, I like Alabama in this matchup, and I'm feeling pretty confident because I think I got a pretty good handle on LSU. I'm 3-0 betting on LSU this year. I picked USC and Texas A&M against them, and then I picked LSU against Ole Miss. So we've got a strong trend going here. Now, I do want to sort of mention that LSU Ole Miss game again, because if you watch the show that week, one of the key points I brought up is why I liked LSU to win that game was that Brian Kelly is great as a home underdog. Throughout his career at LSU, Notre Dame, and Cincinnati, he is 13-6 outright as a home dog. They're a home underdog again, and yet I'm going against Alabama. But it's really all about the matchups. Like I've said before on the show, I'll occasionally reference trends like that. But if the matchup seems to point the other direction, I'll go against that specific trend. I'm all about the matchups. In this case, I think Alabama, on offense, Alabama has weapons. LSU has a bad defense. They're going to move the ball. Alabama's going to put up points. I don't want to talk too much about that side of the ball because really the key here is we know Alabama's going to score. Can LSU keep up? Can they move the ball against this Alabama defense? Now, LSU is an extremely aggressive downfield passing offense. They average the 3rd most pass attempts per game at 15 or more yards downfield. So they are going to try to keep pace with Alabama by attacking downfield. The problem is I don't know that that's really a great strategy because Garrett Musselmeyer, even though he's throwing downfield at a ridiculous rate, he hasn't been very good. He's completing 39.7% of those passes at 15 or more yards downfield. That ranks 75th in the country. And look at their schedule. They haven't really played a lot of great pass defenses. In fact, the best one they've played was Texas A&M. And on those downfield throws against A&M, which was a pretty easy win for A&M, they kind of blew them out in the second half. Nussmeier was 4 of 14 on those downfield attempts. That's a terrible 29% completion rate. And like I said, A&M ended up running out of the building in the second half of that game. So against a pretty good pass defense like Alabama, they're much more similar to A&M than other teams that LSU has faced. I think they're going to be able to shut down this passing attack. Now, could LSU pivot to run the ball? Alabama has been vulnerable at times against the run this season, so it's possible. But I think this is a case of where strengths and weaknesses match up to favor Alabama in this game. Because what Alabama struggles with is creating early contact. They rank 80th in opponent-adjusted yards before contact. But LSU's offense struggles with that too. They rank 79th by that same metric, and they're going to be without 3-year starting left guard Garrett Dellinger, who was injured last game, is going to be out this weekend. So this is a depleted LSU offensive line. Now, LSU has some physical running backs. They rank 18th in yards after contact. Maybe they can gain an edge there. But guess who leads the nation in fewest yards after contact allowed? It's Alabama. So the area where you think where Alabama might be vulnerable, LSU is bad. The areas where LSU is strong, Alabama is stronger. So I think LSU is going to struggle to throw the ball downfield. I don't think they can consistently run the ball against Alabama. I think they are able to win this game and cover that spread. Now, one last note, because I started out by talking about trends, and you never feel good betting against a trend. And I have bet this trend with Brian Kelly for a number of years now. So I just want to point out another trend to maybe ease your mind if you're worried about that, because Kalen DeBoer has a pretty good trend of his own. He is 7-2-1 against the spread in games where the spread is a field goal or less. So in these tight games, Kalen DeBoer is also very good. So really, if you're looking at the coaching trends, one way or the other, one of them's got to lose. All the numbers seem to point to Alabama. So I'll lay the points and take Alabama in this one.
All right, Ryan, last but not least, we've got another big game here between the Clemson Tigers and the Virginia Tech Hokies. Right now, this line has moved around a fair amount this week, but is back to 6.5. You can get 6.5 with Virginia Tech. You faded Clemson last week with Louisville. You took double digits with Louisville. That worked out perfectly for you. Now the Tigers travel to Blacksburg to take on the 5-4 Virginia Tech Hokies. Clemson is looking to rebound off of that loss. Virginia Tech also lost in overtime against Syracuse. Clemson has beaten Virginia Tech 6 consecutive games, but all 4 losses by the Hokies this year, they're 5-4 on the year, have come by a touchdown or less. Show us why we should be backing Virginia Tech tomorrow against Clemson.
Yeah, I mean, we won easily last week taking Louisville against Clemson, and a big reason why was the run defense. So why wouldn't we just go back to it right now that Clemson's going up against a much better running team in Virginia Tech? I mean, I talked about in last week's show how I thought Isaac Brown was going to run all over that Clemson run defense. He had 20 carries for 151 yards, just shredded them. This is a terrible Clemson run defense. I cannot stress that enough. You know, normally with these big name teams that are at the top of the heap every single year, and we talk about them struggling, it's because they slipped to the middle of the pack and whatnot, and it's just they're not up to the standard that we're used to seeing them. But that's not the case with Clemson. They are truly one of the worst run defenses in the entire country. Everybody can run on them. They just happened to play a stretch of games between the Georgia game and the Louisville game where they didn't play anybody with a pulse. One of the worst stretches of schedule anybody has seen all season. They finally played another competent team, not even a great team, just a competent team in Louisville, and Louisville took it to them. Virginia Tech, like I said, they can run the ball even better because Bashal Tutin is one of the best running backs in the country. Now, have to acknowledge that Tutin and their quarterback, Kyron Jones, are both banged up. They did not play last week. Both of them practiced a little bit last week. Tutin actually even warmed up before last week's game. Virginia Tech coaches are saying they're questionable for this game, but all of the beat reporters who've been at practice are saying they're taking their usual amount of reps. They're running with the ones all through practice. With this being a huge game, an opportunity to knock Clemson fully out of the playoff picture, pretty confident both of them are going to play. So I'm not too concerned about the fact that they're banged up a little bit. Sounds like they held them out last week out of caution in preparation for this game so that they would be at full strength to take down Clemson. Now, to get into some of the numbers on the Clemson run defense again, it's all similar stuff that we talked about last week. Based on opponent-adjusted numbers, Clemson ranks 123rd in yards before contact, 100th in yards after contact. Now, Virginia Tech's offensive line isn't great, but they're much better than Clemson. They rank 56th in yards before contact. And Tugboat Tutin is one of the best running backs in the country. Like I said, they rank 16th in yards after contact, primarily because of him. So to dig up just a little bit deeper, Virginia Tech, their scheme in particular, they spread defenses out. They create light boxes. Clemson has been just brutal with a light box. They're allowing 3.7 yards before contact with a light box. That ranks 114th. You can't be competitive against a competent team when you're giving up 3.7 untouched yards on the ground, especially against a team like Virginia Tech, which is a run-heavy offense with a great running back. So all of these numbers just point to Virginia Tech dominating this game on the ground. Now, Virginia Tech doesn't have a spectacular defense. Clemson's going to put up some points. I'm not predicting that Virginia Tech's going to come out here and run away with it the way that Louisville did last week. That may have been a little bit fluky. I think it's probably a competitive game. But look, if you told me with 100% certainty that both Tootin and Drones were going to be 100% healthy for this game, I'm playing the Virginia Tech money line. I think they should be favored in this game. I'm going to play it safe and just play the spread because I think they're going to play, but maybe they're at less than 100%. So maybe this is still a competitive game. But, even with them at less than 100%, I love Virginia Tech on the spread in this game.
All right. Well, there we go, Ryan. We got 3 bets from you this week. We got 2 home dogs. We got 1 short favorite. Let's see how we get it done, Ryan. Good luck this week. Of course, make sure that you guys are following Ryan over on X. Make sure that you are reading all of his great content up at sharpfootballanalysis.com. Before we get into our next subject, we're going to be diving back to the NFL streets on Sunday. Saturday's accomplished. Let's talk about Sunday. Do want to mention we're at the midway point through the season. We've got an extra week. Obviously, the last couple of years, we've brought in an extra week here, no longer 17. We now have 17 game schedules. And we've got, of course, 17 week schedules. We're through week 9. We are now up $11,334 for a $100 better. So we've crossed that threshold. We've crossed over the $10,000 mark of profit. We're up past the $11,000 mark of profit. If you've been betting with us, $100 per bet, you have now up over $11,000. Computer totals 17-7. We've got a couple released already this week. I told you on Tuesday we had 1. We've got multiple now. Our elevated props are 62-34 so far this season. NFL overall, we're at 61%. College overall, we're at 61%. So we want to make sure that you guys are aware. We just reduced prices since we crossed that midway point on everything up at the website. If you go to sharpfootballanalysis.com, all the betting packages, all the all access packages, the NFL Plus package, which gets you all of our fantasy betting props, etc. All of those packages have been reduced now to a much lower price than they were previously since we've crossed that midway point. And in addition, to give you guys a little bit of an added bonus, use the coupon code SHOW25, SHOW25, and you get 25% off those already discounted prices. Again, I just said we've just reduced all of those prices. Our records are going great. I got another big weekend in store for everybody. I'm really looking forward to what we've got. So use SHOW25. Let's talk NFL. For all the Pam fans out there, she unfortunately can't be with us this week. So I know some of you guys in the chat were a little bit disappointed, especially I saw Jack mention previously that he laddered Cortland Sutton up to a 14-1 hit based upon Pam's bet last week. One of her props was on Cortland Sutton. He absolutely dominated. So Jack, outstanding that you were able to nail that one. As I said, Pam can't be here with us this week. She'll be back with us next Friday. But I've got a special treat for you instead. This is a perfect opportunity to welcome in for the first time ever Rich Hribar to the Sharp Football Show. You can follow him on X. Obviously, most of you guys know him. A lot of you are following us over at Sharp Football Analysis, have either a betting package, an all-access package, and you're already reading some of Rich's great write-ups as he previews every single game, every single week from a fantasy perspective. But Rich, I know for you personally, a lot of these previews that you end up writing, now that you'll be able to bet props where you are, definitely transition into the prop world. And you've been getting deep into the prop streets with us on the Slack and helping out our subs as well with some of your great advice. And so I figured great opportunity here to walk through some of the games with you and identify some of the props that you have looked at and that you are betting this week, and some of which, of course, may wind up in our subs pockets as well. So let's go ahead and start off first with the game down in Tampa Bay, where the San Francisco 49ers, off of their bye, bring their 4-4 record into Tampa Bay, who is off of a short week, not just a short week, but an overtime game last week over in Kansas City. They're going to be hurting for rest. They're probably going to be a little bit tired, and you're looking to attack a wide receiver for the San Francisco 49ers. We might get Christian McCaffrey back. We don't know how much we're going to be able to utilize Christian McCaffrey in this game, but you're looking to target Deebo Samuel here. What do you like about Deebo, and what are you targeting?
Yeah, and seeing the image of me pop up, back by producer Matt. I mean, if you'd have had the prop on me wearing the Black Guardians hat today, you would have already cashed in as well. I got to work in some more colors, I think. But yeah, I'm definitely loving Deebo Samuel in this spot this weekend. He's coming out of the bye, also okay. He left that Week 8 game with the rib oblique injury. He had 71 yards in that game and probably left about 60 to 70 yards on the table, with a touchdown that was called back. Brock Purdy missed him on a slant over the middle of the field where he was wide open. They left a screen that was well set up on a high pass too on the table. But it really kind of goes back to how Deebo Samuel has performed with the absence of Brandon Ayuk. We saw in that game in Week 8, he was targeted on 29.2% of his routes in that game. That was his highest rate since Week 1 when Brandon Ayuk was coming back off of the late, signing of his contract right before the 11th hour of the season starting. And with Brandon Ayuk off the field and Brock Purdy on the field, Deebo Samuel has been targeted on 33.3% of his routes with a gaudy 4.38 yards per route run. He's played 2 games outright without Brandon Ayuk with Brock Purdy on the field, and he's had the 71 yards and 129 yards in that game. So we're looking at a hyper-efficient player getting more opportunities, and we're getting a very middling kind of receiving yardage total for him in this game. And then the Bucs, you talked about it. Their defense is really faltering. They're on short rest. Buccaneers games now are averaging 776.4 combined yards per game. That's the second most in the NFL. So just look for a lot of offensive production in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we transition to another player that you like for the same game in a market that I really love as well. We're going into the longest market, which I'll be hitting again later in the show when I give out some of my favorite longest prop bets. And you're going with a tight end in this one, George Kittle, to attack that same defense, which is very weak against tight ends. Talk a little bit about the prop that you've got for George Kittle.
Yeah, this is a fun one. I also like the longest kind of catch and longest run markets. Spoiler alert, there might be some more here, and we like to have fun with the overs here too. So we're some people might say where are the unders? We like to have fun. We want to cheer for things, and I do like this market too, especially because you only need the one play, right? That's what's always fun about these types of bets is you don't have to have that like pure run out. You just looking to catch one big play, and if there's a tight end that's producing splash plays, it's George Kittle. He's already cleared this number in 6 of his 8 games this season. He has a career high 81.6% catch rate already. He's averaging 72 yards per game. That's his most per game in a season since 2020. What we like about him in this individual matchup too is that Tampa Bay is blitzing at the 9th highest rate in the NFL, 29% of opponent dropbacks. They also, when these two teams met last year, they blitzed Brock Purdy on 45% of his dropbacks in that game. And when you look at George Kittle, he leads the team in target rate against the blitz. He's been targeted on 29% of his routes against the splits this season, 2.62 yards per out run against the blitz. And then just from a matchup stance, Tampa Bay has had a lot of issues with tight ends and giving up big plays to tight ends. They've allowed a tight end to clear this number in 5 of 8 games this season. They're also 30th in yards per target allowed to tight ends this season at 9.2 yards per target. So we're getting a lot of opportunities here for George Kittle to kind of continue his hot start to his season coming out of the bye.
All right, I don't disagree there either. Now we go over to the West, and we're looking at the the Arizona Cardinals, and they're going to be hosting the New York Jets. The New York Jets, they got one more game after this one, then they finally get a rest. They finally get their bye week after that. This team is struggling. They're 3-6 at the present moment, and they've been trying to work in different players along the way. You're identifying, though, a wide receiver that's old faithful, that's been there from day one, that has the chemistry built in, and that is Garrett Wilson. What do you like in particular about the matchup that Garrett Wilson has against this Arizona Cardinals pass defense? Keep in mind, the New York Jets have played a gauntlet schedule of opposing pass defenses, and they finally get to go up against an easy one. This is a spot that I identified as well as it relates to just an easier pass defense to face. Quarterback pressure won't be on Aaron Rodgers quite as much. Talk to us a little bit about Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, and what we love too about the Jets passing game is just so concentrated. And we saw last Thursday on Halloween night, basically Garrett Wilson and Davante Adams almost combined for 70% of the team targets. And since the Jets have acquired Davante Adams, Garrett Wilson's had 23%, 32%, and 31.3% of the team targets to go along with 47.8%, 62.6%, and 31.9% of the team air yards. He's gone over 90 receiving yards in all those games. He's gone over 90 yards in his past 4 games since he opened up the season with like that really, really tough schedule of opposing defenses that you kind of alluded to. What we like extra about this game and this line, which is lighter than what Garrett Wilson's been producing, is that Allen Lazard is also on injured reserve, and they traded away Mike Williams this week. With Allen Lazard off the field last week, Garrett Wilson played 82% of his snaps out wide, which was the highest rate of a season. Arizona to outside wide receivers this season is 27th in catch rate allowed. They're 21st in yards per target allowed to outside wide receivers. So we're looking at this Jets passing game to keep going, and Garrett Wilson to kind of keep trumping this number, which definitely feels light compared to what his production and usage has been this season.
All right, now let's move over to the Chicago Bears, who become a very rare favorite in this spot. This is the largest favorite that they've been all season. In the only 2 games that they have won by at least 7 points, they've been favored, but nowhere near close to as much as they are right now in this game against the New England Patriots. The other thing that's interesting about this game, Rich, I know you don't love to factor this in too much, but could play to your advantage here, is we are calling for some winds in this game, about 18 to 19, maybe even 20 miles per hour sustained, with some gusts into the low 30s, which could keep the focus on less of the deep shots down the field, a little bit more concentrated near the line of scrimmage with regards to the run game and the short pass game for Caleb Williams. Talk to us a little bit about DeAndre Swift, what he brings to the table in this matchup, and what prop you like for him here.
Yeah, I believe the Bears have the longest home winning streak too, active in the NFL, going back to last year. So at least you have that going for you, Bears fans. So it's been tough out of the bye here, I know, for Bears fans these last couple weeks with the Hail Mary and then just the disaster of the outing that they had last week. But I do expect things to be better this week. You can bet them being home favorites, and it's a really good spot for them. What we like about DeAndre Swift is that he's just he's controlling so much of the workload outside of the 1 yard line where they want to give offensive linemen and Rashad Johnson touches. But last week, even 22 of 27 backfield touches, that was 81.5%. He's now the RB5 on the season in share of backfield touches on the year at 72.8%. We're getting them as huge home favorites in a really good spot. DeAndre Swift has cleared this number in 4 of his past 5 games. New England's allowed a running back to clear this number in 5 of their past 6 games. They allow 4.7 yards per carry to running backs. That's 26th in the NFL. They've allowed over 100 rushing yards to combined backfields in 7 straight games this season. So we're looking for DeAndre Swift to kind of keep this thing kind of moving downhill.
Speaking of moving downhill, we've got one of our favorite backs that we love this market for, and that is Jahmyr Gibbs. We'll go to Sunday Night Football. Rich is going to make sure that he doesn't make his first appearance here on the Sharp Football Show without giving you something to bet for Sunday Night Football, and then we'll follow that up with giving you something to bet for Monday Night Football. So he's like Santa Claus giving you guys some presents here in this episode. But talk to us a little bit about Jahmyr Gibbs and what he can do in this market. We've got the Houston Texans. We have yet to see their final injury report, but what we do know is that Will Anderson has been a DNP 2 straight days at practice, Wednesday and Thursday. We'll see if he can get suited up to go for the game Sunday night in this spot against the Detroit Lions. But a key cog there on the defensive line for the Houston Texans. You're attacking Jahmyr Gibbs. What do you love about Jahmyr Gibbs, and what prop do you have for us?
Yeah, this is an old faithful. I almost hate to give it away, right? But it's one we've given away to subs so often the last 2 years. It's just tried and true with Jahmyr Gibbs, kind of longest rush, and the books still are kind of just meandering their way up. You can get this still at like 15.5, 14.5 in some spots. He's cleared this number in particular, not just his longest rush number, in 18 of 26 career games, 6 of 8 games this season. Among 47 running backs with 50 or more carries this season, Jahmyr Gibbs is first in yards per carry. He's first in EPA per rush. He's 4th in success rate. He's 2nd in explosive run rate. He's 2nd in lowest rate of runs that fail to gain yardage. He's the only player amongst those 47 running backs that averages over 3 yards per carry before contact and 3 yards per carry after contact per run. And then when you look at this individual matchup, even with Will Anderson, Houston is 30th in the NFL in explosive run rate allowed to running backs. Indoors on a fast track, we're just looking again to pop that one run, and Jahmyr Gibbs has regularly popped at least one of those for us more often than not.
And last but not least, you've got a lot of good points here to make about this weak secondary of the LA Rams in terms of explosives that they allow. And, Tyreek Hill really went out there, trumped up for Tua, making all the comments about how he loves Tua. He can't wait for Tua to be back. And the Dolphins still haven't won one of those games. And we've seen a little bit of early money in the market come in on the Miami Dolphins in what should be a fabulous Monday Night Football game, where right now the LA Rams are only laying 1 point at home against these Miami Dolphins. You like Tyreek in this matchup against the LA Rams secondary. What do you identify about this matchup that you like so much? And then what's the prop that you're betting?
Yeah, I mean, I really like this spot for Tyreek, who's been a little quiet this year, especially since week 1. And obviously, we had the lengthy sample of Tua off the field, and everyone knows the splits with the Miami Dolphins when they have Tua and they do not. But even, Tyreek's come out of just modestly, at games of 6 for 72 and 4 for 80 since Tua's return. We haven't had that big Tyreek definitive moment game. And I think that this spot on Monday night is definitely one of those. The Rams pass defense has turned it around over the past 5 or 6 weeks, but it's literally predicated on getting pressure on the quarterback. And when you don't pressure the Miami Dolphins and Tua, it's just so hard to pressure him, I should say, because they get the ball out so fast. He's only been pressured on 17% of his dropbacks. That's the lowest rate in the league. He gets the ball out on average 2.29 seconds after the snap. That's the quickest in the league. And when the Rams have not been able to get pressure on the opposing quarterback, they're 30th in yards per pass attempt. They're 28th in touchdown rate, which is not going to matter to the bet that we have here. And then when quarterbacks get rid of the ball within 2.5 seconds against the Rams, they have allowed a league high 7.3 yards per pass attempt. They also are one of the most sensitive teams to play action, 10.4 yards per pass attempt play action. That's 30th in the league. Tua is 3rd in the league in use of play action on per drop back. So all those things are all fun stats top down. But then there's also some stats here about the Rams against wide receivers that we should love, especially. Well, one, they play a lot of zone coverage. They play cover 3 on 40% of their snaps. It's the 6th highest rate in the league against cover 3. Tua has targeted Tyreek Hill on 28% of his routes, over 3 yards per route run. Those are stats from this season, too, where Tyreek Hill has not even been phenomenal yet. But we like the vertical balls against the Rams. On throws 10 or more yards downfield, targeting wide receivers, the Rams are 26th in completion rate. They're 29th in yards per pass attempt. They've also allowed a league high 8 touchdowns on those throws. We saw that last week be a problem again, even without DK Metcalf. Seattle wide receivers caught 10 of 15 targets on throws, 10 or more yards downfield, 250 yards and 3 touchdowns on those. We even want to bump it up to throws 20 yards further downfield to targeting only wide receivers. They're 30th in completion rate and a lot of league high 6 passing touchdowns. So I like Tyreek receiving yardage, 76.5 yards. I think this is my ladder kind of play of the week. We take Tyreek all the way, bet him through 100 yards. If you want to get even cuter after that and keep bumping it up, definitely I'm looking for Tyreek to have his first splash kind of game of the season on Monday night.
And if I recall, there was a play when the Dolphins were out on the West Coast. I don't know if it was against the Chargers or who it was a few years ago, where Tyreek picked up that fumble and then ran around the end and scored a touchdown. So I mean, Tyreek is no stranger to performing in some of these big moments. So that would be a run play, not helping us on this particular prop. But absolutely, I'm sure you guys have listened to us for the last 15 minutes. Dr. Rich, I've enjoyed his content a ton, and I really hope that you guys try to take advantage of that, because he's sharing this every single week. All of this type of information is in his game previews, and he writes up a game preview for every single game. And he's not just giving these to you in your inbox on a Friday nights for you to digest, because he spent all week researching this stuff, and now you got to try to process it in 48 hours. He's delivering this stuff on Tuesday, on Wednesday morning. All of this information is in your hands. You have all day Wednesday, all day Thursday, all day Friday, all day Saturday to process and take advantage of it. So that's one of the best things that we do with the worksheet over at Sharp Football Analysis is we get it to you early, and Rich is obviously the leader at doing that. So we really appreciate Rich for stepping in for us here. I encourage you guys, if you're interested, go ahead and check out our fantasy package. This is also included as part of the NFL Plus package, which gets you all the betting picks and all the props in addition. So either the NFL Plus package or just the fantasy package, you can find that information from Rich every single week over there at sharpfootballanalysis.com. Make sure that you guys are following Rich over on X. You can see his handle there at Lord Reeves, and we really appreciated him stepping in here today for Pam. Now let's go ahead and talk a little bit about what you guys are asking in the chat here, because I want to get to some of your questions and comments. And as a reminder, make sure that you guys go over to the YouTube handle. We've been trying to tweet this out on X like we normally do, but for whatever reason, the X live broadcast video is not working properly. And so as a result, I just want to remind everybody, if you want to be being able to contribute to the chat, to some of the commentary, get some of your comments posted up here, as well as get your questions answered, make sure that you're going over to the YouTube channel, Sharp Football Analysis. You can find the show there live. Make sure that you subscribe when you're there. We absolutely appreciate that. Make sure that you give this broadcast a thumbs up as well. Let's see here. We've got, well, everybody likes Rich here, dropping some of their props. We appreciate you guys enjoying the content. Peter, Exile, Andrew, we appreciate you checking out the show. Yes, Rich is obviously absolutely incredible. So we're really fortunate and happy to have him both on the show today, as well as part of the Sharp Football Analysis family. We did not get a chance to ask about Tootin over 92.5 yards. My bad. I didn't see that comment when I was talking to Ryan. Maybe I'll get him to come into the comments and provide an answer to you on that college football player prop there. Let's see here. Well, we maybe got a little bit of movement based upon the Garrett Wilson prop from Nick moving at FanDuel. ESPN has Swift over 69.5 if you can bet there. So that is a good look. Jack said, Warren, on Tuesday you intimated the over for Cincinnati, Baltimore. Thanks, I won big. Are you also intimated the Pittsburgh, Washington over? Any thoughts there? Well, I will tell you that one interesting nugget came up just a couple of minutes ago, that Marshawn Lattimore is not playing in this game. And there were a lot of people out there who I believe decided to come in on this under when it was at 46 and a half when they got Marshawn Lattimore, thinking that he was going to be able to contribute. And what did I tell you guys on Tuesday when we were doing the show live, because this had just happened? I don't really think that he's going to be able to contribute much. Now, I didn't know that he would not play entirely, but I did not think that he was going to be a big factor there at all. And of course, now he is not playing. The other factor with this total is the weather. And I just want to verify something here with that weather. It is currently looking like on Sunday we're going to be fine. Everything that I've been checking, and this was the same way early in the week and it's the same way right now, says that there is some light rain and then potentially a little bit stronger rain coming Sunday evening. If this game was a late kickoff, it would potentially impact it. This game is a 1 p.m. kickoff. There's not supposed to be any wind or any rain or any sun. It's just supposed to be cloudy during the course of this game all the way until 5 p.m. So that's what the weather report has been for days now. It's what the weather report currently is right now. Weather does not look like it should impact this game. There's 45s everywhere. I do think that there is a little bit of value on the over at 45. Not a ton. And I don't think the market is going to suddenly go up to a key number where it would become a factor, which would be 47. So I even see a 44.5 out west at Circa, but most of you guys obviously can't bet there, but there's 45s everywhere else pretty much. I'm not saying go run and bet this at 45, but you asked, I'm going to answer that I do think that there is a little bit of value to the over there. Yeah, I mean, Exile, Washington should be a big test for the Pittsburgh defense. Exactly. We showed that graphic on Tuesday where the Pittsburgh defense has played nothing but cupcakes for a long time now, all the way since week one. Week one was the only team that they played offensively that ranked above average, and that was the Atlanta Falcons when Kirk Cousins was not playing above average, when Kirk Cousins was literally a statue in the pocket who could not move, who did not have confidence in his Achilles, and was just getting into the flow of things this season. So it is going to be a much more difficult test for the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. Mike Tomlin has a great track record of coming off of the bye and playing really well. Cliff Kingsbury, I also shared on the Tuesday show, has outstanding results. And he was the same way. If you guys remember back when we first were talking about the Commanders before the season started, I drew some parallels to the Commanders and the Kyler Murray-led, Cliff Kingsbury-led Arizona Cardinals in his rookie season. And I mentioned that those offenses were above average in Arizona. His first year there, that offense was above average in getting to the red zone. Their lone problem was scoring points when they were in the red zone. They struggled to score points when they were in the red zone. Well, we actually have a little bit of a parallel here, and that is what I think is going to be the difference maker in this game for me personally. Whether or not the Washington Commanders can actually punch in some touchdowns when they get into the red zone against this Pittsburgh Steelers defense. They have been getting into the red zone against everybody, even the better defenses than the Steelers. Even they're going into the red zone on the road against the Cleveland Browns. They're going into the red zone against pretty much every single team they played. They played the Giants a couple times, whose front seven, whose defensive line is pretty good. They've gone into the red zone against them. Their issue is just scoring touchdowns when they're in the red zone. So it's a tough test for them. It is a home game. They've got a game, I want to say next week against the Eagles on Thursday night. So we'll see if they come out strong here and try to put up some points early in this game and force the Pittsburgh Steelers to become a little bit more one-dimensional and take away the run game and the play-action game from Arthur Smith. But we'll see. But I'm excited to watch this game. It's probably the game that I'm looking forward to the most of any game that's going to be played Sunday afternoon. I'm really looking forward to the Sunday night game with the Lions and the Texans. I'm looking forward to this Monday night game with the Dolphins, with basically their last chance effort here to get their season back on track. If they fall to 2-7, season is over, obviously. So Nick says Tomlin as a small dog is super scary. Yeah, and as it relates to the Washington home fans and the Pittsburgh, just the last point I'll make on this game is that there is no doubt that Pittsburgh fans travel, and Washington is not a far distance, and so there will be Pittsburgh fans here. This will not be, in my opinion, a total takeover. There are a lot of Pittsburgh fans that live in this area, though, that probably were circling this game for a little while, that were planning on coming here. They did not know that the Steelers would be 6-2 at this point in time. This is going to be probably a tough ticket to get because I think Washington fans are really excited about this team. And so it's going to be a great environment as well. The environment is going to be outstanding. If you just want to watch football and you like great environment type games, how many games do we have here at 1? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we only got 7 games at 1 p.m. This is one of the 7. I think it's going to have the best sort of vibe and setting in the stadium of any of these games. So if you have Sunday ticket and you're able to watch it, I highly recommend tuning into this game for sure. Let's see. You hit New York. We'll see. Hit the Jets on Wednesday. The Jets are now favored by 1.5 to 2 points. So you got some good value there as well. Due to the play action info, are we liking the over for the Dolphins at Rams is what Tom is asking. I think the Dolphins do stand to put up some points here. I have not yet played this game in any capacity, side, total, but the player props market is obviously one of the derivative ways that you can attack it, or it could be the first way that you look to attack it. So to be determined what I do personally in terms of involvement in this game. But let's just put it this way. I need to look at the final injury report. It's fortunate that the Rams are getting back some of their offensive linemen. I want to see how the defensive line of the Miami Dolphins sits. That being said, we got a lot of questions in there. I've got to get back to my friend Joe. We got to talk ref analysis because Joe has been sitting backstage for a little while, and I was getting distracted answering all of your guys' questions. So I enjoy doing that, but I lost track of what I'm doing here. Okay. Before we get into some of the games that Joe has identified that could have some great examples of some ref edges that you could theoretically pull out of them, Joe, I do have to talk to you a little bit about, and there's Joe. You can follow him on X. He's a great ref analyst for us here at Sharp Football Analysis. He writes an article that appears every single, I want to say Thursday, breaking down some of the biggest games of the weekend and places he sees value because of the referee. I want to talk a little bit about this Bengals at Ravens game last night. We saw 2 penalties, Joe, at the very end of that game that were not called on the 2-point conversion, that the announcers believed both of those should have been called. And so before I get your opinion on that, Matt, I want to bring up the first video. Let's just play that.
Look how physical this route is. He's got 2 Ravens on it. They grab a hold of him. And he right away, that's defensive holding right there that they should have called.
Okay, so Herb Street says defensive holding that they should have called. Now, Matt, let's go ahead and bring up the second clip.
2-point we go. This is after the throw, the 2-point conversion. Oh, wow. It's another one. And Joe doesn't complain very often. He did there. He just kind of grabbed his, wow, look at that follow through. And then you throw that into Gesicki. Garrett, what do you see here on both these? The hit, the follow through on his face mask, and Gesicki.
Yeah, it was clearly defensive holding before the pass was in flight.
Yeah.
That should have been called. And that does look like forceful contact to the head of the quarterback. That's a person that's roughing the passer and should have been called.
Okay, so Terry McCauley, the NFL ref expert, comes in and says that both of those should have been called. And then we've got earlier in the play, so both of those were on the 2-point conversion attempt. Earlier in the game, Joe, we had another missed penalty on a hit to Joe Burrow's face while he was still holding on to the ball. On that 2-point conversion, he had released the ball, but you're still not allowed to strike the quarterback in the head like that, in the face. But on the other play, Matt, can you bring that one up?
See if it did. Had a beat getting right there. Yeah, he got his thumb. Yeah, he actually grabbed onto him. No call, so it's 3rd and 10.
So another play that the Cincinnati Bengals were trailing. Obviously, they go down the field and score that touchdown to bring the game to 35-34 and then fail on that 2-point attempt where there was no penalty. But another example of late in the game on a drive that mattered, the Cincinnati Bengals are trying to move the football and Joe Burrow has contact to his face, in this case, to his helmet rather. And in this case, I mean, the helmet's being moved, hurting his field of vision, let alone being against the rules. So talk to us a little bit about these penalties, which of these you thought probably should have been called, and any update to why we think the league is struggling so much to call these, because the referees, there is supposed to be somebody who is staring right at that quarterback. Am I wrong? I mean, to have some penalties that are missed on some other players where a guy might be blinking is one thing, but the quarterback in the pocket with his head is like the number one area that we're supposed to be protecting. And there were 2 instances of the quarterback having his face mask being hit or grabbed onto, and no penalties on either of those plays.
Right. We need to call this segment Face Mask Fridays from now on, because it seems like every Friday we come in to talk about a face mask non-call on the Thursday game. So let's start with that one. Obviously the face mask calls, the first one and the second one, they're bad no calls, as well as the defensive holding. But here's the thing, and people will disagree with me on this one, and I posted it on Twitter last night. It's extremely smart football by Baltimore on that 2-point conversion. And here's why. 90% of the refereeing crews are not going to call anything. In these high leverage situations where the game's on the line, they're going to stay out of the way. Okay, so let's break this down. Baltimore's assessing it this way. There's a 90%, 80-90% chance that does not get called. on them, the defensive holding I'm talking about. So why not do it? There's a slight chance that we get penalized on that. So what's the punishment if they do get called? The punishment is the ball moves from the 2 to the 1. That's it. So statistically, it's in their favor to do that. And I don't blame them. Every team should do that. Make the referee make the call in a high leverage situation. And like I said, most of them won't. I ran through the referee crews last night. There's 17 different crews, and I tried to pinpoint who would have called that in that situation. Maybe Alex Kemp's crew. And if he was having that sort of night, the Land Clark crew maybe have called it as well. But most of them will just stay out of the way. So it's smart for the teams to do that, and Baltimore played it perfectly. And like I said, worst case scenario was the ball gets moved from the 2 to the 1 yard line, and then they just run the play again. But my real criticism on the other side is Cincinnati. They have to use that same mindset and run like a pick play in that 2-point situation, because again, the referees are probably there's a good chance they let that go. And so you have to use the situation and the lack of calls in that situation to your advantage. And if they call it, they call it, but there's a good chance they don't. So to me, it was just really smart situational football by Baltimore. They got away with it. Yeah, it was a holding. But like I said, in these 2-point conversion situations, the rule book, you can throw it out the window because they're not going to call it. And Baltimore played it perfectly.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with regards to that. With the face mask penalties there, I don't know if both of them should be called face mask. Should we have been throwing flags on those? Because the holding, I 100% agree. And I also agree with the way to combat that, which is the pick play. I did think that Mike Gesicki was doing a little bit of NBA-style acting, of course, there on that one. But with regard to the face mask ones, remember we had Diana Rossini on the show a couple of weeks ago, and she mentioned that replay assist in the future would get involved with some of these face mask penalties or incidental contact to either say that it wasn't or to potentially throw the flag if it was. I'm not sure if it would only be to call off a penalty or would it be to add a penalty. She wasn't clear, and I don't think that there's been any decision made on that.
Right.
But
we just said a couple of weeks ago, like when you start getting into this situation of what are they calling? Do they call no calls? Do they call? This is where it gets problematic. And we went through this 2 weeks ago, and there's no real clear answer. And I keep going back to this. Any publicity is good publicity. And I can look around the internet this morning and TV stations, and that's what they're talking about. And I don't think the league cares.
Well, we'll see if they care enough to decide that they want to make some of these plays able to be changed with replay assist. I mean, I think at some point when they get consistently called out on the integrity of the game, now everything you hear, and I don't really believe that this is the case, right? I don't believe that everything's about integrity of the game. I think that these refs in many cases are just not seeing things clearly, focused on too many things. I'm not sure, like making mistakes. I don't think the refereeing is great in the NFL right now. And so I think those are the reasons, not like, well, he's got some sort of a parlay that he needs to cash on this. So that's why he's not doing that. I don't believe that that's the case with the way that these refs are incompetent for the most part. But they cannot enjoy all of the press that's now being turned to, well, the game is fixed, the league is fixed. And so I think that might be one emphasis to get them across the finish line, at least with using a little bit more replay assist, which I would love to see because it's so quick and it's so obvious. It helps clear up those clear and obvious mistakes. I want to get into a couple games you've got for us. We've been talking a lot on the show about that Monday night game between the Miami Dolphins and the LA Rams. Huge game for Tua. Ron Torbert is on the call for us. Talk to us a little bit about what you are expecting to see on Monday night when the Dolphins travel out to Los Angeles to take on the Rams in what is truly a must-win game for the Miami Dolphins.
Okay, so in the Sean McVay era, if there was one officiating crew they could have every game, it's Ron Torbert. I'll give you some numbers right now. So they've played 11 games with Torbert in the McVay era. The Rams are 9-2 in those games. They're 5-0 at home. They're 8-0 straight up as favorites, and they're 6-2 against the spread as favorites with Ron Torbert. And the two non-covers, I'll tell you, because a lot of people will remember this, the Todd Gurley game when the Rams hosted the Packers in 2018, and they were a 7.5-point favorite. They're up 29-27. Todd Gurley breaks it down the sideline with 90 seconds left and falls down at the 1 yard line. and they didn't get the cover. That was one. The other non-cover for the Rams with Ron Torbert was the Super Bowl against the Bengals. They were a 4-point favorite, and I think they won 23-20. But they love Torbert, and I can give you some reasons why. His crew places a disproportionate amount of emphasis on the offensive line and offensive line penalties. They rank second in that combination of false starts and offensive holding. And I think the reason the Rams do so well with him is Sean McVay preaches discipline more than any other coach in the NFL. They don't commit those silly errors, pre-snap penalties. And so the area that Torbert focuses on, they're almost immune to that. So they function properly, whereas the other teams they play, and in this case, Miami is a culprit here, they do have problems. The Dolphins are a top 10 penalized team, but in pre-snap penalties, they rank third in the NFL. A lot of false starts, illegal shifts, illegal formations, and things of that nature. And that's really the sort of thing that Torbert does focus on. If there is a positive here, if you want to bet the over, Torbert is 5-3 to the over this season, and he's not a guy I associate with overs. You know, Ron Torbert and unders go together like peanut butter and jelly prior to this season. But this season, it's changed. And so here's the thing. The Rams, number one offense as a beneficiary of automatic first down penalties, primarily via defensive pass interference. And remember, this has been done without Puka Nacua for most of the season. So number one beneficiary of automatic first downs, Ron Torbert's crew ranked number 2 for defensive pass interference penalties per game. So the Rams are going to throw the ball. The Dolphins are going to throw the ball. Could be high scoring. But again, I love McVay and the Rams with Torbert. Like, the record speaks for itself.
All right, before we get into the next game, we do have a question in the chat. Tyler asks, can you explain why there was the booth review on that first down under 2 minutes? I'm not sure if you remember the play that he's referring to.
That was in the first half, right?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, I don't know why they do that. They do that on spot fouls, like on the spot, the marker, right? Is it short of a fourth down, or is it I don't know. There's no consistency with any of this stuff. I don't know how it works. I really don't.
Yeah, there was a play that I was puzzled with when Lamar Jackson scrambled in the first half, and it looked like he was tackled 3 yards beyond the sticks. And in the replay, I could see where you might think that his knee went down, but the ball was ahead of the stick still. It would have been when his knee went down, like near the marker, closer to the marker. He never came close to stepping out of bounds. All of a sudden, it was a 3rd and 1. It was more like 1.5 yards, and the spot made no sense to me. I went back, I rewatched it. That made no sense. The announcers are saying, like Al Michaels was like, "Oh, I gained 12 yards," and they're and saying it's a first down. Meanwhile, it's a 3rd down. They hand the ball off, get stuffed, and then it's a 4th and 1. And like that could change a game. And right. I don't understand what the spot was or how that whole thing progressed.
There's no rhyme or reason to this stuff. It's just very random. And I do like when they look down from the booth and they change a call, because it's usually right, and it just speeds the game up. And that's at the end of the game. That's what you want. A fast game. They get the calls right, and we move on.
Actually, what Tyler is saying is that it was, and Dat Boy Klaus seems to be helping out here. The booth review that they're referring to was on a 4th and 10 with less than 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter, on the final drive with the Yoshi catch. Oh, Andre Yoshivas catch. I don't know if you.
I do remember, but yeah, why they review some things and why they change it and they don't do it with others beats me.
Okay. All right, let's move to the final game, Joe, that you would like to call attention to us for. And this is the Sunday night game. This is the Detroit Lions taking on the Houston Texans. Now, some late news that we are just seeing here is that it looks like Nico Collins has been removed from being out and might be playing in this game. I'm not sure 100%, but it looks like he could probably play. I've not seen yet, though, whether or not that is the case. But I think that might be the case. We'll see. In either case, Detroit is taking on the Houston Texans on Sunday night with Bill Vinovich on the call. What does Bill Vinovich on the call mean to the outcome of this game, in your opinion?
Well, I can tell you before the game, both fan bases are quite happy with the assignment. I was looking around on the internet this week, and Lions fans are happy with this assignment, and the Texans fans are happy. So there's no pre-game anger as far as the officiating crew goes. So let's get that out of the way. This is more about just the teams. It's just a total contrast in penalty profiles. The Texans, 59% of their penalties are on the offense, which is above average. The Lions, ultra efficient, just 39% of the team's penalties are on the offense. So you got a huge discrepancy right there. The Texans' offensive line, more than double the amount of penalties than the Lions this season. And then this is where things may, in theory, break for Houston. The Vinovich crew places a less of a emphasis on the offensive line penalties. The one area that they do call a false starts, but that's spread across the board. A lot of those are called on the tight end position. So in theory, the Texans catch a break on Sunday night with the Vinovich crew. Big thing here, third down. Texans the number one penalized offense on third downs this season, and that's just, you can't win games long-term doing that. The good news here is the Vinovich crew, they're one of 4 crews that call less offensive penalties on third downs than defense. So the Texans, in theory, do catch a break here. But again, you still got to go out and play the game. You know, the only way they're going to win is play smart football, get rid of all the silly penalties that they've been committing, and play ahead of the chains, keep the Lions off the field. Because, again, who knows if Nico Collins plays. But early in the season, they could get away with the penalties because they had Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs. Well, those guys aren't there anymore. So you've really got to slow it down, play ahead of the chains, no false starts, no illegal shifts, no illegal formations, and just dominate the time of possession. So I think they've got a chance, but it's up to them to really prove it, whereas I know the Lions can do it. I'm not sure the Texans can.
All right, well, there we go. We'll see what happens with Nico Collins. We'll see how this game goes. Obviously, the Lions, a lot of people thought that the Lions were going to struggle outdoors in the rain, in the elements in their first outdoor game against the Green Bay Packers, and Jared Goff really came to play, performed extremely well. His great play carried over. This Houston Texans defense has not been playing up to the same standards, and they haven't been playing very many good offenses, so it'll be interesting to see how this Detroit Lions team can match up with them. And, you know, theoretically, the Lions defense has not been as good. Can the Houston Texans take advantage? They typically are better at home, in domes, and with Nico Collins out there. So if Nico is getting his full allotment of snaps, maybe CJ Stroud settles down, feels a little bit more confident. It remains to be seen how he's going to do there. So with that said, Joe, thank you so much for breaking down last night's game with the Ravens and the Bengals, as well as giving us some predictions for Sunday's matchups and Monday Night Football as well. So thanks to Joe. Make sure you guys are following him on social, on X, as well as reading his great content over at sharpfootballanalysis.com. Okay, it is time for a couple of the longest props. And we have some good numbers on some of these props that I can share with you. Some lines that I really like as it relates to juice and availability. So I've got a few more. If you are a subscriber, just get ready for a busy afternoon. We're going to be just rolling through. I'm going to be sitting here for the next probably 5 to 6 hours working on props, sending multiple waves out to you. So just be expecting to receive those. It's going to be a busy afternoon for me here on the prop streets. But as it relates to the longest prop bets, we've got 2 of them for you. Obviously, we do those every single week. Last week, we only had 1 because the one that I was looking for to give out, the line kept moving up. I mentioned that on last Friday's show. And then unfortunately on Saturday, I didn't come back. And I know people in the chat were like, well, we wanted you to come back. Where was that other prop? I apologize for that. Did give it to subs. It was the Tua longest completion under 37.5. It had been 36.5 when I was working on my notes on Friday morning. It moved up to 37.5 at one book. I didn't want to give it out to you guys at just one book at 37.5. So I was waiting to see if we could see more books move from 36.5 a little bit higher. But that one was able to cash, but obviously doesn't count for the show purposes. So we've got 2 in store for us here today. And I'll go ahead and give you the first one. The first one is a simple one. Actually, let me give you let me change the order I was going to do this. This is the one that's available pretty much everywhere at plus 100. You got great juice on this one. You can go to DK. I don't know about FanDuel. It might be at FanDuel as well. You can go to DK. You can go to MGM. You can go to ESPN. Now, if you have like a Bet365 or if you have a Rivers, you can get it there too. You're going to be paying a few more cents in juice, minus 105. But you're going to go to the Denver Broncos versus Kansas City Chiefs. It's a 1 p.m. kick, Denver at Kansas City. I want you to go to the rushing props in Denver at Kansas City. I want you to go to the longest rush market. And we are going to be betting Javonte Williams, longest rush, under 10.5. It's plus 100 at DraftKings. It's plus 100 at MGM. Looks like ESPN Bet just moved from plus 100 to minus 120. So if you're still at ESPN Bet, it just moved 20 cents on me releasing this. Go over to DraftKings or go over to MGM. They still have it plus 100 at under 10.5. I do not know if what FanDuel is at on this particular one. The next one, before I do logic, I just want to go to the next one real quick to just make sure that everybody can get that. We want to go to the longest reception market for the San Francisco 49ers at Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Rich Hribar gave this one out earlier. It's one that I agree with. FanDuel, Rivers have the best numbers for this. FanDuel and Rivers have the best numbers for this. 22.5 is fine as well, but there are a couple 21.5s out there. We're doing George Kittle, longest reception, over 21.5. That was a FanDuel and at Rivers. It also is at DK at 22.5, minus 110. It also is at MGM for 22.5, minus 105. ESPN has 22.5, minus 105. So if you want to pay a little bit less juice, FanDuel was at minus 114. Rivers is at minus 121. If you just want to lay 105, just go grab it at one of these other spots at minus 105 at BetMGM, at ESPN, or minus 110 at DK. Some of the logic for Rich already outlined a lot of the logic for the George Kittle one, but I do just want to show you one graphic that I've got here. We'll see if you can make this out. Okay, here we've got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, one of the worst, the second worst pass defense against tight ends. And here you got the San Francisco 49ers. The San Francisco 49ers on this graphic at the bottom here, this is on the y-axis, yards per attempt to tight ends. The 49ers have the second highest yards per attempt when they throw the ball to their tight ends. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers allow the second most yards per attempt to tight end targets. So you've got a battle of the team that gets the second most yardage when they throw the ball to tight ends against the team that allows the second most yardage when tight ends are targeted. Rich gave you a lot of other great logical reasons as to why he likes that one, which I echo, obviously. This is one, as you can see, I worked up this stuff a couple of days ago when I go through my packet and do all my sheets and flags and whatnot. And I identified that one as a look there as well. So I fully concur with Rich on that. It's going to be interesting to see how much CMC gets involved in that game. Will he hit the ground running, no pun intended, and be utilized at a high rate? Will they slowly work him in? In either case, I've also heard some speculation that maybe he's just used in the red zone a little bit more frequently. Maybe he's helping the San Francisco 49ers punch some scores in, and his dynamic ability is more so utilized down inside of the red zone. But in either case, this is a distinct weakness with a head coach in Kyle Shanahan who has 2 weeks to prepare for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense. And I think the San Francisco 49ers are going to be able to come out and have some success with George Kittle. On the Javonte Williams, This one is pretty straightforward. The last 5 weeks, I believe, the Kansas City Chiefs have allowed just one run from a running back to exceed 9 yards. And I believe that was against the San Francisco 49ers. Obviously, we took, well, if you're a subscriber on the Monday night game, we took the Rachaad White longest rush attempt under 9.5. And I think he had 1 or 2 that snuck to 9, but nothing beyond that. We know that the Denver Broncos could be in a similar position to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where they're in a negative game script, negative game state, and need to pass the ball a little bit more than run it. We also know that they're playing on the road. I do fully expect that Javonte Williams is going to get his fair share of touches. But this is the one run defense that if you're looking to just pretty regularly bet a longest rush attempt under, it's when a team plays the Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs run defense just has been really stout and really good, especially of late, at slowing down some of those big explosive gains on the ground. And if you think about Steve Spagnuolo and you think what his strategy might be in this game, it's hard not to believe that he's going to simply try to limit the run game and make a rookie Bo Nix starting on the road in Kansas City against his pass defense try to beat him. Right? Like if the Kansas City Chiefs come out here and lose this game because Javonte Williams runs wild over them, that you got nobody to blame but yourself if you're Steve Spagnuolo. The other interesting factor here is that the Kansas City Chiefs offense was on the field a lot in that last game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Obviously, that game went to overtime. The one part of that game that there's all these trends that arise because the game went to overtime, right? But think about this. The Kansas City Chiefs defense did not play in overtime. The Kansas City Chiefs defense was not even on the field in overtime. So, like the trends about the Kansas City Chiefs in overtime, like it didn't impact their defense at all. It impacted the Tampa Bay Bucs defense, but the Kansas City Chiefs defense was not on the field at all in overtime. And you might still have the Kansas City Chiefs offense deciding to go a little bit slower, take the game a little bit easier, especially if they've got the lead late, and just reduce the overall play volume for this game. Now, I know that the Denver Broncos are a relative side in this game. Some of the people, if you're looking to bet this game against the spread, are looking to back the Denver Broncos here. The current spread is 7.5. So this was as high as 9.5 at some point. It has been taking Denver Broncos money. People are looking to fade the Kansas City Chiefs off of a short week and off of an overtime game. You also have the Patrick Mahomes issue, where Patrick Mahomes tweaked his ankle. And so I don't think this is going to be the type of game where the Kansas City Chiefs win this game. You know, like the Baltimore Ravens beat the Denver Broncos last week, was that 41-10 or something like that. I don't think it's going to be one of those types of games. And actually, I worry more about those types of games sometimes than I do the tight game, because the tight game, I've got a defense that is going to be playing the run pretty consistently. If the Kansas City Chiefs are up 31-10 in the late third quarter, then they don't really care if the draw play gains 12 yards by Javonte Williams at that point in time. But if this game is a tight game, a 7-point game, they're going to still be trying to stop the run all the way through it. So that I actually think is a little bit better. I don't want the Broncos to be leading this game and having their run rate go incredibly high, but I also don't want the Chiefs to be blowing them out, and that one little occasional run could go because Steve Spagnuolo is not caring what they do on the ground at that point in time. Peter's asking about Amon-Ra this week over his yards against the Texans. Peter, I have not looked into Amon-Ra at all yet for the game against the Texans, so no opinion on that right now. Coach said that Estime will get more usage. You know, we did back estimate when he first was being discussed. I want to say it was against the New Orleans Saints because we knew the game script in that revenge game was going to favor the Denver Broncos, and so that they probably would have a lead and Estime would get some touches, and he did, in fact, go over his total there. But then I think he fumbled in that game, or he fumbled in the next game. In either case, he hasn't been utilized quite as much. I don't know what's going to happen with Estime. I personally don't think that they're going to trot Estime out there against the Kansas City Chiefs defense. The Denver Broncos are 5-4, surprisingly. The Kansas City Chiefs are 8-0. Denver's got a winning record. They do have hopes of still making the playoffs. I mean, this team is not great, but they are finding ways to win some of these games against some weaker competition. They've had some things bounce their way, of course, and they've got an opportunity here, in their opinion, to try to pull out an upset. I do not think that their game plan is going to involve a lot of estimate in this one. So Sean Payton, I don't know what his track record is with being honest about these types of things. I do think that, was it McLaughlin will get a little bit more run in this game for sure. He's the more explosive back. But if I'm not mistaken, and I got to double check this, but I believe that Javonte Williams has had one run of more than 9 yards in the last 3 games. And that was against the Saints, who have a horrific run defense. And so I don't expect, Javonte to get like 13 to 16 carries in this game. I think he's on the lower end of that spectrum. And I just think that this defense is going to be good enough to limit that. So it's not like my favorite play of the year. It's probably not even my favorite bet of the week, but it is a bet in the longest market that I do like at this point in time. And like I said, I probably will be able to share a little bit more later. Colin asks, can the Commanders offense keep up their efficiency against the Steelers defense? So 2 things on that. No, they're not going to be able to stay as efficient as they have been in games past because the Steelers defense is definitely better. But the Steelers defense is not this juggernaut if you can get past that pass rush. If you can get beyond that pass rush, which you've got a very dynamic quarterback who has specialized at times at getting rid of the ball quickly and sometimes at pushing the ball deep down the field, I think you do have this ability to have some success. Keep in mind, the Steelers know themselves better even than we do. And the Steelers decided to make that move and outbid other teams in order to go after a cornerback at the trade deadline. They know that their secondary is, this was the Commanders. The Commanders decided to do that. The Commanders secondary is going to have problems. I think the Steelers offense and Russell Wilson is going to have the ability to attack on them downfield. And I think that's going to help push the pace on both things. I think this is going to be a nice give and take game. We've seen some pro betting groups come in on the Commanders. We've seen some pro betting groups come in on the Steelers. So the side is relatively split. Obviously, the total has moved up and then down a little bit. So there's money on both sides there. That's why I just think this game is going to be a fascinating one to watch because I think they're going to be competitive. The key, as I mentioned before, Colin, with this game, in my opinion, is can Cliff Kingsbury dial up a few things in the red zone that will have a little bit more success? That's the key. I think they're going to still get trips to the red zone. It's not going to be like the game against the New York Giants where every single time they have the ball, they get down to the red zone. That's not going to happen. There are going to be a few punts in this game from the Commander side of things. The question, though, becomes when they are down in the red zone, can they make those possessions count for touchdowns, or are they getting forced into field goals? Weather. So, Jason, yes, there is a game. The Chicago Bears game is looking like it's going to be setting up for some high winds. So let me pull it up. Jason was asking us about the weather. So in Chicago, as of right now for Sunday afternoon, no rain in forecast, but we are looking at 18 to 20 mile per hour winds. Let's confirm the game time here. I believe it's at 1 p.m. Eastern. Yes. So that's noon Chicago time. 17 to 20 mile per hour winds with gusts 26 to 29, some 30 mile per hour winds. I mentioned that earlier in the show with Rich. It remains to be seen. I mean, Chicago is the windy city and everything. It remains to be seen whether or not we're going to actually get that sustained amount of wind during the course of the game. If we do, it would impact some things. But we're going to have to sit here and get a little bit closer to kickoff to determine if that's the case. Nick says Will Levis is back. Tennessee Titans team total under. That is all. I don't disagree with your sentiment or directionally how you're thinking there. I was actually last night when I was looking at some of these, I was looking at whatever Will Levis longest completion was under, but it did, you do want to double check what the Chargers have been allowing. The Chargers have been a decent overall defense, but sneaky have been allowing some 1 or 2 bigger gains in the passing game for all of their opponents so far this season, which is a direct contrast to what the Tennessee Titans typically have been doing, because Will Levis and that offense and even Mason Rudolph have not had any success on their chunk gains down the field. So I'm sure they're going to line this longest completion by Will Levis around like 32 and a half or 33 and a half. And looking towards the under on that could be something interesting, but I will just throw the word of caution that the LA Chargers pass defense has tended to give up like 1 or so bigger gains there in the passing attack. K. Dotton, Thorell, if I'm pronouncing that right, Robinson is asking about K. Dotton. We know K. Dotton is going berserk. I actually haven't looked at what his number is yet. The San Francisco 49ers have been good against tight ends, though. The San Francisco 49ers are allowing the third or fourth lowest yards per attempt when teams are targeting tight ends. So that's one of the interesting handicaps of this game when the San Francisco 49ers are in Tampa Bay laying 6 to 6.5 points on Sunday afternoon. It's because what Tampa has had to morph into, which is more running back targets and more tight end targets, this is what San Francisco with Fred Warner and their linebacking core typically has done well defending. The way that you historically have wanted to attack, at least for the last couple of years, the San Francisco 49ers team is outside, down the field. They're good underneath. They're good at the middle of the field. You want to attack them at the perimeter with wide receivers. And that's not really the way that the current form Tampa Bay Buccaneers can attack. If they had Mike Evans, yes. If they had Chris Godwin, yes. They don't have those guys. And they have K. Dotton, who I love the way that Liam Cohen has been motioning him around and the pre-snap motion and then using natural rub routes to just get him the ball quickly. But, you know, so I'm not going to say bet the under on K. Dotton just because the 49ers are good against it, because they're force feeding him naturally and they're finding ways to get him the football, but it is just not a great and perfect matchup there. Okay, Jason wants to remind me to hit the EDSR, so I need to do that right now. Pulling up my file here. Okay. I might need to zoom in here a little bit. All right. All right, we have one of the biggest mismatches is in favor of the Chicago Bears. That's mainly because the New England Patriots offense is the worst in the NFL on early downs. Now, it has improved a little bit, but the Chicago Bears, they are one of the biggest edges, but naturally the Chicago Bears are laying 6 points right now. So factored into the number there, in my opinion. Another big edge is for the Philadelphia Eagles over the Dallas Cowboys, but once again, that should not be a surprise. They're laying 7.5 points now on the road, but the Philadelphia Eagles, both on both sides of the ball, offense and defense, have a massive edge there. Let's see. Another one that's somewhat close is the Atlanta Falcons. Close in nature of being one of the biggest edges. It's not quite as massive, but the Atlanta Falcons, primarily driven by their offense, which ranks number 5 on early down efficiency against the New Orleans Saints, whose offense ranks number 24 in early down efficiency. Both defenses are about the same, but that difference between how good the Atlanta Falcons offense is and how the Saints offense has struggled. Keep in mind, though, Derek Carr is back, so that offense, though without Chris Olave, is going to be better than what it was with Spencer Rattler. I don't expect it to be 24th moving forward, but the Falcons obviously do have the better offense there from an early down perspective. If you're looking at, I also look at early down efficiency based upon totals and whatnot. And one of the ones that's jumping out from an unders perspective would be that Saints-Bears game. Sorry, the Patriots-Bears game. If there is the wind. So if the wind is there at the 38.5, 39.5, I mean, there's numbers all over the place, but 39 is not really an important number. But there would be a tiny bit of, hey, pay attention to the under here because both of these offenses have struggled to be efficient on early downs, though we know that the Patriots defense is pretty darn miserable. And from the opposite perspective, let's see here. Yeah, I think that's good. I think that's good for now from an early down perspective. Yeah, Daniel Fredrickson asks, Tyreek used to always be minus 200 anytime touchdown score. He's been sitting at plus odds most weeks now, even with Tua back. And look at his yardage total as well. I think the market in general is down on Tyreek. He's had an ankle injury. I saw the game last week or 2 weeks ago. He had his ankles pretty taped up. He's not quite 100%, although Tyreek is always seeming to deal with one thing or another. But he is not quite at 100% in this offense. What are you going to get out of Tua and what are you going to get out of Mike McDaniel? And there's a lot of questions. They haven't come back and really hit the ground running, right? That first game against Arizona is a little bit more short underneath. The game against Buffalo, they always struggled, which is why I was betting the under and Tua's longest completion. But they don't push the ball down the field. That defense is designed to take away the bigger passes to wide receivers down the field. And so Tyreek hasn't been in a very good situation. This week, however, listen back to the beginning of the show. What are we going for? An hour and 40 minutes here? We got to cut this off in a second. But that is one of the things that Rich really was looking at was Tyreek and his ability to have success. And I showed those play action numbers. Rewind this all the way to the beginning, the first 5 minutes, if you want to see the graphics about the play action and how the Miami Dolphins could have some success there. Okay. That's it. I know there are a few more questions out there that I didn't get a chance to hit, but I appreciate you guys asking. We have now been going, like I said, for over an hour and 40 minutes. We got to bring this to a close. Couple reminders. If you are enjoying this and you're watching it, we're giving you some of our best bets and sharing a lot of our time, please make sure that you subscribe over at the Sharp Football Analysis YouTube channel. Definitely helps us to make sure that we are giving you guys the content that you're looking for. If we see those subscriber numbers go up, means that you guys are liking what we're doing, and we're going to continue on with this. And in the same thought process, please give us a thumbs up for the show. Help spread the word about some of the betting information. And we do fantasy shows as well throughout the week that we have in store for you guys. So please like and subscribe over on YouTube. Make sure that you can utilize the coupon code SHOW25 to get 25% off. We just reduced all the prices on the website for season-long packages to reflect the midpoint in the season, and we're giving you 25% off on top of that. Thank you guys. Python, appreciate you. Tom, appreciate you very much. Michael, appreciate you. Daniel, appreciate you. Tyler, appreciate you. Thank you guys a ton. We'll be back on Tuesday. And I do want to say, if there is a show that you do not want to miss, if you've got scheduled the Tuesday appearance now, lock in the Tuesday appearance now, noon Eastern on Tuesday. You do not want to miss the show that we've got planned for you on Tuesday. So be here or be square literally on Tuesday. You don't want to miss our show Tuesday at noon Eastern. Going to share something with you that we haven't shared at any point throughout the course of the season. It's going to be outstanding. You're going to love it. Be here on Tuesday of next week. With that said, Great luck in all your wagers, college and pros, and we'll see you back here on Tuesday.